Dark Corner is a rugged mountainous region in northeastern Greenville County, South Carolina, that's famously known for the last 200 years for its home-style moonshine. Today, there's a Dark Corner located on downtown Greenville, South Carolina, right on Main Street. Joe Fenton, you've got a lot in common with Dark Corner, a lot of history there. Tell us about it.
Sure. Grew up in the Dark Corner, lived there for about 15 years in the middle of a picturesque peach orchard there at the base of Hogback Mountain on the Hyder's property, and became very close to the people of the land and realized after a few years that's actually what makes that part of South Carolina so special, or the people and their tie to the land.
Well, you're an electrical engineer, graduate of Clemson University. How did you and your partner get interested in making moonshine legally?
We're electrical engineers. We look at everything like a process and sort of a scientific process, if you will. And he and I work together on electrical engineering jobs in many of the major spirits producing plants in America. And what we realized was that many of the spirits we drink today are being mass produced with very low quality. And so as entrepreneurs, we wanted to do something ourselves with our hands, sort of like a work of art. And the craft spirits movement has been taking place here in America for about the past 10 years. And we decided to bring it here to Greenville, South Carolina.
Joe, I didn't realize there were byproducts from moonshine, starting with soap.
We're actually taking our methanol byproducts, known as the wood alcohol. It's the first alcohol or spirit that comes off the still when you're making moonshine. And rather than pouring it down the drain as waste, we actually donate it to my 9th grade teacher, Tawana Weicker, who owns Be Kind Solutions, a local biodiesel distillery. She there takes fat and oils from restaurants, mixes it with our methanol byproducts, and she makes America's first moonshine-infused glycerin body soap.
Well, describe Warhorse to us. Is this stuff actually clean leather?
Yeah, the Warhorse is the most amazing product on the market. We clean everything in-house with it. We clean our copper pot steel with it, our windows, our floors. It's an amazing product, sulfate-free, phosphate-free, safe for pets, best product in-house.
Now, I've heard a lot about cookbooks, but I don't believe I've ever heard a cookbook titled Cooking with Moonshine. Do you really cook with moonshine?
Yes, you can. You can cook with moonshine. My favorite way to cook with moonshine is actually to make a fresh pound cake and then pour our moonshine over the top of it. The Carolina peach shine just goes wonderful with it. But we actually work with a local lady who's got a lot of the upcountry recipes, southern cooking if you will, and we've asked her to infuse the recipes with some of our moonshine. And so we've created a cookbook just for our products.
Joe, there's always a lot of homegrown products in a food pantry, and y'all use moonshine to actually infuse these products. How so?
Sure, it's one of our most popular items in the Mountain Craft Store. We actually take local South Carolina produce, seasonal, and we infuse it with our corn whiskey. And we put about 3% in there to give you a nice little kick, a little bit of that corn sweet flavor, and it blends in well with the peach jams, the corn relish, and things like that.
Before I visit your partner and take a look at y'all's still, tell us about these old stills that we used years ago. How are they different in the day?
Well, compared to our still we have in the distillery, these stills are very reminiscent of what we have now. They're all copper, and the ones behind you, one's from the late 1800s, the other's from the early 1900s. The major difference in both of them, the later one was actually riveted, whereas the newer one was brazed. What you'll see in our distillation system is a hand-built, custom-designed copper pot still, built and designed in the tradition of our Scots-Irish settlers. It's made of all copper, and a lot of people ask, why do we do that? Copper has the ability to pull sulfur compounds out of spirit or alcohol, and therefore it gives a better flavor.
Well, I'm gonna go visit your partner right now and take a look at this new legal still in South Carolina. Rick Winger is a co-owner in Dark Corner Distillery here in downtown Greenville. Rick, let's talk about making some of this moonshine. It all begins with grinding up some grain.
Yeah, it sure does. We actually start our process in the basement. We grind up our corn, our red wheat, our barley, and our rye.
Well, I notice you weigh some of this material. Why is it important to weigh the grain after it's been ground up?
Well, it's like a recipe. You know, baking a cake, you want to make sure you get the right amounts of ingredients.
We talk about corn whiskey all the time, but I notice you're adding some other grains. Why are there other grains in addition to the corn?
Well, they give it different flavor profiles, different finishes, and even a different texture.
Well, you bring it upstairs and it looks like you're pouring in a big old pot of boiling water. Almost makes it look like you're making a pot of grits.
Yeah, it sure does. We add the grains into the boiling water. We want to access the starches. So those starches dissolve into the water, and that's why we use hot water.
And you have to constantly stir it all the time, don't you?
Yeah, you really don't want that to burn fast to the pot.
Well, as it leaves this pot, what happens to the material itself?
But we take the mash at that point away from the pot. We put it into to a barrel to cool it.
And this barrel has got a certain temperature. I noticed it's got copper pipes, some good cool water. Why do you have to cool the mash down?
We want to cool it down so that when we add yeast to it, the yeast doesn't die.
Well, what does yeast do to it? I always thought that yeast made bread rise. Does it make moonshine rise?
It makes that grain cake rise, that's for sure.
And when you add that yeast to it, I notice it starts bubbling.
Yeah, it does. As the yeast is fermenting, it's eating the sugars. And it takes those sugars and turns them into alcohol. The other byproduct of that fermentation process is CO2. So that creates gas that suspends our yeast cake.
You all talk about these cakes. It doesn't look like a good cake to me, but what is this cake on top?
Well, it's actually the ground up grain, some of the bran from the grains that we've ground up. It's being suspended by the CO2 that's coming off of the yeast.
And of course, as the moonshine comes out from being cooled, it just trickles on out. It takes a while to make a big batch, doesn't it?
Yeah, it takes about 7-8 hours.
Rick, I want to talk about your wooden barrels now. I've heard a lot about aging whiskey. Is that what y'all doing here at Dark Corner?
Yeah, we sure are. We start with a barrel. It's an American white oak barrel. It's been charred by the manufacturer, which is the exact same process that you use in your bourbon distilleries and whiskey distilleries. We age it in the wood. The wood actually imparts a flavor into the whiskey.
Well, I know you constantly taste your product, or test it rather. You take the top off of these barrels. Looks like you're sticking a hydrometer down in there. What are you really looking for?
Well, that's actually what we're doing is we're taking samples of the product as it ages. The product's continually changing. The character, the notes of the product change constantly. So we're monitoring that so we don't overage.
So the longer the product stays in the barrel, the darker it gets?
It does get darker over time.
Let's talk about flavors, beginning with the peach, because South Carolina is the second leading peach producer in the nation, right behind California. I know a lot of people enjoy this peach flavor.
Yeah, they sure do. We start with our moonshine, our typical unaged moonshine, and we'll flavor it with peaches, peach juice, and it's very popular.
Well, you've got one that you're very proud of. Tell us about it, because y'all pretty well patent this name.
Yeah, we did. We have a trademark on Appalachian Shine. It's our take on apple pie, which is a classic moonshine recipe.
Butterscotch is certainly different in the moonshine business. Never heard of a butterscotch flavored moonshine.
We've come to the right place then. We have a butterscotch flavored moonshine, and it's also very popular.
I want to thank you for letting Team Making It Grow spend some time with you here today. And I know we've got some viewers that'd like to find out more about the distillery you have. You certainly add to the uniqueness and diversity of agriculture in South Carolina. How can they reach you when you aren't busy running shine?
Well, you can certainly access us through the internet at darkcornerdistillery.com or just give us a call here at the distillery. The phone number is 864-631-1144.
And the best of luck to you and Joe.
Thank you.